So hello, everyone, and thank you for being here with us this afternoon. And thank you, Martin, for your very kind introduction. So my name is Märta Segerdahl. I'm an MD, PhD, a specialist in pain medicine, and I'm also the Chief Medical Officer of Alzecure Pharma. So we have been talking about erythromelalgia, but exactly what is that? Very few people have heard of it. It's a rare chronic painful disorder. It's also called burning feet syndrome. It's a triad of redness, swelling, and intense pain. And this pain that comes in attacks that are called flared, and they're triggered typically by heat or stress, meaning physical stress like exercise. And you can see these photographs below here. These are from actual patients. These are not Photoshop. So you can see, especially in the middle, you can see this picture of this woman with a picture of her when she's fine between attacks and then when she has an attack. As you can see, it's red, it's swollen, and it also looks like she's in pain. So one flare or one attack can last for 1 hour, or it could last for several days. Erythromelalgia is again divided into primary erythromelalgia, which is mostly hereditary and often linked to mutations, but not everywhere. And secondary erythromelalgia, which is usually triggered by severe illness like a malignant disease or an autoimmune disease, or even by some medications. So how does it appear and how common is it really? The prevalence of erythromelalgia, meaning that how many people actually suffer from this at this one point in time, point in time, and looking at the primary and secondary together, is approximately 13,000 per 100,000 individuals. So that qualifies as an orphan disease. When we did our application to the US for an orphan drug designation, the literature helped us to find that there is a number between 43,000 and 70,000 individuals estimated to have erythromelalgia. So that well qualifies for the orphan drug threshold of below 200,000 individuals of the US population. It can actually start very early in childhood, from age 4 to 6 and up to adolescence, but also even start later in life. Primary erythromelalgia is mostly a lifelong and disabling disease with very many secondary complications like skin wounds, etc. And it's also it could also be an inflammatory microvascular disease like in secondary erythromelalgia. And then that could be a side effect medication, but also a co-phenomenon where you think that the microvascular disease is the only problem, but no, that's not quite it. It's also erythromelalgia. And these individuals, they suffer from pain attacks. They feel like a very intense burning. It's very clearly characterized by patients. And the increased temperature could be ambient, it could be a fireplace, could be it's warm outside, or it could be very local, like you have the sun shining on you, or you have too warm clothes on. The only remedy that actually works today is either cooling your feet in ice water or putting them in front of the AC or a cooling fan. There is a global patient advocacy group for this indication, and they give out surveys every few years. So the 2021 survey is now published. And from this, we can conclude that the hereditary forms actually start by age roughly by 4 to 20. So it's quite, one thing is literature, one thing is a questionnaire. But the sporadic forms often occur in adult age. Who do they see? Do they see general practitioners? Not really. They won't really recognize this. It will take more than a year from a contact to the first time to a diagnosis, and not until they've seen a neurologist or a dermatologist or a rheumatologist. So basically, it's a specialty care disease. The pain flares that come either most days or pretty much every day, as you can see from the right-hand pie chart, about 75% have most days or every day. They're burning, as mentioned. They have a varying duration between 1 to 5 hours or even more than 5 hours. And the typical daily pain, like an average pain, is what we call moderate pain. So between 3 and 7 out of 10 on the 0 to 10 scale, and 10 is the worst you can even think of. And the worst case pain when they have their attacks is between 8 and 10 out of 10. And as a comparison, you could say that a delivery of a baby is about 8 out of 10, and an amputation pain could be around the moderate range. So this is quite heavy and severe pain. Flares are mostly triggered by heat, physical stress, but also in other conditions, it could be like it's in combination with a flu or some infection coming on. Best therapy is cooling, which can be damaging. They can actually get wounds from the cold water or cold fan, and then they could get infected and be very scared, get a lot of scars on their feet or hands or whichever area it is that is affected. There is no effective medical treatment, so that also fulfills the orphan criteria, not only the number of patients, but also that there is no effective medical treatment. Not only not approved, but nothing effective. So it's a lifelong disease, and some patients actually improve over the years, but the mainstay of patients actually get worse. 50% of them actually get worse, and about 1/3 have about the same level of problems, and a smaller group actually improve. And that's the improving part is usually the patients with a secondary erythromelalgia, where they have realized what the problem is and they have cured the cause for it. So, as it could be understood, is that this has a huge socioeconomic impact also for the patients, but also the family and caregivers. So, what has this to do with the TrkA-1 receptor? Well, the TrkA-1 receptor is actually key in pain signaling. So the receptor, as Martin mentioned, it was characterized in the 1990s by the group of Professor David Julius. And it was shown to be central for the mediation of heat and pain. The receptor is also called the capsaicin receptor, or capsaicin as in chili. And when you heat the skin, this little figure on the bottom right shows that if you heat the skin, shown at the bottom, very bottom of it, you can actually increase the pain and the circulation, the redness, significantly. And when you cool, instead, it goes down. So the receptor triggers the release of vasodilating substances from the sensory nerve endings as part of everything. So it's very similar to the way the capsaicin works. So the target mechanism then, well, the TrkA-1 receptor or capsaicin receptor is central to the initiation of the pain signal, also called the transduction. And it's distributed all throughout the body. And if you have a painful condition, like in neuropathic pain, these receptors are upregulated. So that means that there are more of them, and they're also more sensitive to activation. Previously, there's been a number of TrkA-1 antagonists, like in the first decade of this millennium, and they have been halted or changed to other topical indications, such as Novartis. And that's because these candidates were very effective. They were given orally, and then they challenged the whole systemic target effects by the reduced heat sensitivity all over the body. So patients could actually get unintended burns and scald themselves when they were drinking hot drinks, which of course is not a feasible treat for a new treatment against pain. In many cases, patients also got transient hyperthermia, but this was not the key reason for closing down the projects, as we become aware from different types of contacts and publications. So by developing a topical formulation that we've done at Alzecure Pharma, ACD440 is now a gel, and we have circumvented the problems with the systemic side effects because the effect is only where the gel is applied. This opens up the possibility, adding on to the orphan, but also precision medicine in the subpopulations of chronic pain patients with heat hyperalgesia, where current treatments are known to be ineffective. And then, as mentioned, erythromelalgia is one of these diseases or disorders. So then what does an orphan drug designation add? we were granted the ODD, Orphan Drug Designation, for the treatment of erythromelalgia by FDA. The pre-IND meeting we had with the FDA in Q2 this year, they were very supportive of our development program and encouraged us to pursue this further. There are several benefits with an ODD designation. It's granted for severe and life-threatening diseases without currently available treatment options. So in the US, the disorder must affect less than 200,000 individuals, and in Europe, the prevalence it must affect fewer than 5, up to 10 out of 10,000 individuals. But with both agencies, there are several advantages supporting the development of the program. So one thing is an agreement on program design and output with both agencies and all the way up to market application for both agencies. They're very open to some flexibility, but they have exactly the same requirement for the drug to be efficacious when it comes to launching it, going to market. But this also opens up to more frequent interactions along the way. It actually encourages to do so, but it also reduces the risk of a failure in phase 3. So that's shown as Dimitrova demonstrated that there are much higher approval rates when you have your phase 3 data. So why do we think that ACD440 gel blocks the TrkA-1 receptor in reducing this heat-induced pain? We have conducted 2 studies, one in healthy subjects, where we exposed them to experimental pain, and we reduced the heat-induced pain by 50% compared to placebo after only 1 hour of application. And the pain reduction actually lasted for almost 11 hours after only 1 hour of application time. That publication is possible to download, open access. And then we conducted a study in patients with chronic neuropathic pain with sensory hypersensitivity. So that means that they were actually sensitive to high stimuli that triggered the pain further. And there we reduced the heat-induced pain by approximately 50% as well. And that publication is also available as open access. And just a note that 30% reduction in pain intensity is considered a clinically relevant reduction in chronic pain intensity by regulatory guidelines worldwide. So are there only help in developing? Well, not only, because this has other following effects. So in general, there's smaller programs, there's lower risk, a shorter time to market, but there's a reduced cost for clinical trials, not only because they're smaller, but also because you have tax benefits for the clinical trials. There's no fee for marketing submission for a small company, a reduced fee for big pharma, which is also a cost that is substantial, and they're also exempt from Medicaid price negotiations, as mentioned by Dimitrina. You have an orphan drug market exclusivity for 7 years, and if you co-submit pediatric data, you have another 6 months of market exclusivity. EMA have a similar program with free and frequent scientific advice and no fees for marketing submissions and no fees for the actually quite expensive activity of agency inspections during the review of the submission package. In EU, also orphan drugs get 10 years of market exclusivity for each orphan designation indication, and an additional 2 years for pediatric indications. So it's slightly longer, considerably longer exclusivity in the EMA area. So now what we'll be doing here now after having this orphan drug designation granted, we will continue the preparations for a full development program in erythromelalgia. And during that, we're focusing on optimizing the program design in all aspects. And we're aiming for the shortest time to market and to patients. And also we will be pursuing, of course, business development activities, looking for the best partner to take this asset to commercialization. So in summary, erythromelalgia is a rare and chronic disease of all ages. The pain in erythromelalgia is triggered by heat, and ACD440 is effective in reducing heat-induced pain. So it's a good match. The granted orphan designation shows that the FDA support the rationale for the development of the TrkA-1 receptor antagonist ACD440, especially in erythromelalgia. The designation also reduces developmental costs and gives us substantial market exclusivity going forward. So thank you so much for your attention, and I will hand back to Martin.